All right, I think I just went live. YouTube's giving me a worrying preview that makes me look super red and like over vivid. Let me know if you see that, um, and also that you're getting audio. It wasn't showing audio for a bit, but it should be good. Um, just let me know if you're up here and if you're seeing anything. I don't think there's a bunch of people in here right now, which is fine. Midday is always slower. But I should be live now, so let me know if you can hear me or see me, or if you're here. And if I look really weird. That's the really important part. Do I look really weird? I'm not sure what I'll do if I look really weird, but I'll do something. Okay. That's a year. All right, hey, looks good, sounds good, awesome. Don't look any stranger than before. The volume's a bit low. Okay. Well, I can move the mic a little closer to me. Is that a little bit better? Mic is still low. Let's see. Did it get turned down? Hold on. That should be max volume on the microphone. I can adjust it if I need to, I think. Let's see. Oh, I do have some filters on, so I wonder if it's boosting, if the filters. I have some like room filters that I haven't had before. Is this better? Am I getting more audio here? Okay, you can hear me. Good. Yeah, my YouTube preview is showing me as being like really red-faced. So I didn't know. But OBS says everything's fine. So, oh well. If it looks fine on your end, then we're good. Welcome. It's been a couple of weeks. Actually, it's like been 3 weeks, basically. In the run-up to Rocky Mountain, I was not in a place to do live streams. And then in the week after, I had just gotten home. I was definitely not doing one the day after I got home. Since I am not a content creator by profession, I decided to just skip. This is actually going to be the case again. So I will do this week. Next week will be U.S. office hours. But then the next 2 weeks after that, I'll be in Japan. Well, Seattle in Japan. So I will not be doing office hours during those follow-up weeks. Actually, so the 18th I'll be getting home from Japan. But I'll be in the air, so I won't be doing office hours for that. Welcome, everybody. I see you, Matrix and Bearded Printer and Ken, Ron, Nico Gunn, Sem, Chucky Strike. Thank you very much for coming up, Chuck. Thank you for coming and hanging out with me today. So I'm not just talking to myself all day, because I will. I'll talk to myself. Let me pop over to a HueForge window. I always forget which scene it is. Here we go. Okay, so this is one I've been working on a little bit. I'm actually having some trouble with my XL on this one. It looks like my third tool needs to have the Z recalibrated, and I'm trying to figure out if I can just recalibrate the Z or if I have to do like a whole dock calibration to get that one to work. Because it seems like the other layers are fine, and that layer, and I'd seen it on another thing, but I thought it was the filament. It just smears all over the surface. It's like, it's just the wrong height, and things don't stick, and it smears, and then the next layers are wrong. So, I've printed this a couple times. Fortunately, it's not a super long print. But this is one where I took artistic liberties with the print, with the original. So the original is here. And I took artistic liberties and decided that I was more interested in making something that looked cool than that looked exactly like the print. So I flattened it out a little bit with the mid-tone suppressed just a tiny bit, and then went more yellow, orange, red, and a little bit less. And got rid of the blue and put a little more purple in here. I just I will say there's something about standard mode. Standard mode always gives you the most detail. Well, not all, almost always gives you the most detail, but obviously you're going to have to make color choices and color sacrifices pretty much. I mean, there's some cases where it looks perfect, but most of the time it's going to be a little bit different, and I kind of enjoy playing with that. Right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, see, I decided I like the HueForge better than the original image. Now, I will say, since I'm in edit image mode here, which I don't need to be, I could be out of that, because it's because I'm in edit image mode, it is going to make this image look a little different from what it really looks like, but yeah, I kind of like this better, so that's why I went for it. I just wish I had a copy that printed out nicely. Basically, I get all the way up through the purple, and then when the red goes to print, it just gets smeared all over on top of the purple. It's almost like the nozzle is just so close that it's just smearing that. But I don't know if it's only off by a 0.04 or 0.05, or if it's more. So I might just print a small section of it that has the red and adjust the Z offset a few times until I get the right value. Maybe I can find a calibration print for that. But there's no reason why this shouldn't come out exactly as predicted, except that it's the... So what happens is the red looks terrible, and mostly around the edges of the reds areas, and then the yellow is gappy and super bright because it's not laying down well because there's gaps between it and the lower layers, so it just doesn't. So I've been having trouble with that, and then my K2 Plus is not printing a first layer right now. Now I've only tried with one filament, so I do need to go back and try a first layer with a different filament and maybe dry that one or something. But it's been really frustrating that I cannot get a first layer to go down at all. It's like it doesn't want to stick to the bed at all. And it's more like it's too close than too far, but anyway, that's been fun. And even and I've washed the plate, with soap and water multiple times. So I was trying to print some stuff for other people this weekend, and I just had to give up. That was fun. It happens to me too, just so you know. It happens to me too. Don't know if you guys saw the announcement of the high temperature PLA from Polymaker. I know nothing about it. I did not use any of it in advance. I did not know about this drop in advance. We tight, but we're not that tight. So I'm going to ask them for information on that. I might get some spools, but it would be a really nice option to have high temp stable PLA, even if it's just your backer layer, even if you're only using it for black, to have a high temp layer for your base color, or whatever your base color is, to keep your whole print dimensionally stable and not not have problems with weather would be kind of nice. All right, I have received some office hours images. If you do have an office hour image or a challenge image you'd like to send to me, the easiest way is send it to my email address, steve@thehueforge.com, with office hours image in the subject. I'll check that a couple times during the stream. There you go. So there you go. EA88 or 888. Steve@theofficehours.com. Send me that image. And I will check those before I get going too far in example images. That's always available, so you can send it to me after, I missed office hours, or I saw office hours but I didn't have an image, or I just came up with this image. Send it to me anytime. I do tag those and pull them out and set them aside to do during these discussions. And sometimes I'm going to tell you that image won't work, or that image is going to be really hard. I did that last week, or last time, which was a while ago. There's one thing that let's talk about some 090 changes that some people still have some confusion with, especially if they're, since most of the tutorial videos are only 081 or 07 versions, because we just can't make new videos that fast, and I've been traveling a lot, and I will travel some more. I will try to get a video out, but I'm also trying to get an updated version of HueForge out. So, couple things. One, in the Blend Assistant, this is... if you hit this steps up, before you've set a target color by picking one color and a source color and a target color, if you hit that steps up button to get more options before you do that, your version will crash every single time. But if you populate these, it won't crash. So just don't update that steps until you've set those values, and then it won't crash. It's really easy to avoid that crash, but that is a crash. I have a fix for that. But on the sliders here, some people say, oh, I can't disable a slider. If you right click on it, it tells you almost all the things you can do, and one of them is disable, and that's the space bar. So if I click that, it will disable that slider. And now you can see it without the red slider. And unlike a normal slider, where once you've disabled it and left it, you can't re-enable it with a space bar, you can here. You have full control to re-enable with a space bar. Welcome, Melissa. Glad to have you here, Melissa. Glad you could make it. They are still on YouTube, so you can go and watch the old ones, at high speed until you get to areas you're interested in. Okay, so right-click on one of these sliders. You can do all of these things. Lock in place, which we don't do that often, but if you're going to want to move a bunch of them, but you really want one to stay in place, oftentimes like the top one or the bottom one, you can lock it. L will do that. You can show the TD, that's T. Disable, zero it will move it down to 0. You can say find closest filament, which will sort based on this filament and try to find the closest ones in your list. And the other option is you can now click up here, and it'll bring up the filament editing dialog. And if you do decide to edit the color, it will actually live adjust the color in the image. I mean, it may take a moment, but it will live adjust the color in the image. So you can see what your adjustment's doing. But obviously there is a little bit of delay. I canceled that, so it's not going to do anything. But you can go and edit your filament straight from there. Okay, Ron asked, remind us how to make JPEG files more compatible with HueForge. My JPEGs keep saying unable to read image data sometimes. That's actually very unusual. Unable to read image data. Are you on a Mac, Ron? Are you running Mac OS, and are you running version 081? Let me know that. Generally speaking, with JPEGs, the major issue is they won't do transparency. So if you've cut out a background and then saved as a JPEG, you're going to have a white background. 2, if your compression is anything greater than, less than 92%, you're going to get compression artifacts in HueForge. And then 3, if it's a big JPEG, like if you've got a really big JPEG that's compressed, then the uncompressed size of it can be too big for HueForge. HueForge has a maximum uncompressed size for an image of 500 megabytes. And I will tell you that at the moment, if you're saving your images inside of the project, it is saving the uncompressed image. So they get the project files pretty big. I'm actually going to fix that, one of the fixes for 9.1. One thing I will tell you is that the one thing that's not here, so Z will move this slider to the bottom. It gets it out of the way. It doesn't remove the color, and you can hit Control Z and undo it. But it doesn't get rid of the slider in the set of all sliders. The delete button will, but it is not undoable. If you hit the delete button while hovering over a slider, let me just grab a slider and bring it in here. Oops, I didn't mean to put an image color here. I can just hit delete, and that will actually remove that slider from the set of sliders. If I bring up the slider window, you can still load those color sliders. If I bring up the slider window, you'll see, if I were to bring a color in here, and then I were to hit delete, you'll see that this is the slider here. And if I were to hit delete, that slider is gone, and there's one less slider here. That is not undoable. You can't undo that operation. Okay, so the only thing, Ron, the issue would be if you moved. So the only reason you'd be able to not read JPEG data is if A, it's too big, or B, you've moved that JPEG file. Like you're not saving it inside of the project, and you've moved that JPEG file out of the folder, or you moved your project to another folder and didn't bring the JPEG files with it. I can't think of a reason why JPEG data wouldn't read otherwise. If you do have an example project where the JPEG is saved inside the project and it won't load, if you please email me that or DM me that so I can look at it, that would be helpful. But I've never had that specific issue specifically with JPEGs. The only reason I can think of off the top of my head is that you didn't save it in the project, and when you saved it next to the project, you moved the project, and now the JPEG's not there where it expects to find it. That's the only thing I can think of. And if because you can have it set not to copy the JPEG and not to save it in the project, then it's wherever the JPEG was originally. And if you've gotten rid of it, then it won't find it. So I don't know how your settings are. I'm assuming you save in project though, so I don't see why a JPEG wouldn't work at that point. So I don't know, but if you can find an example project, please. So you're dropping a JPEG into an empty project. So you're just starting off and it's a JPEG and it says you can't read it. There's something wrong with your JPEG. I don't know. I would need to see that JPEG file that's giving you the error. If you can send me a JPEG file that's giving you the error, I can figure out what the problem is. But it sounds like there's something wrong with that JPEG. All right. But I'm happy to take, like, if you can recreate something reliably and you can send me the files that recreate it, I can fix it. Okay, so version 91091, which probably isn't coming out this weekend. It'll probably come out beginning of next week. I'm trying to get it out before I leave for Seattle and then Japan. Version 091 is going to be just bug fixes. There will be no new features. The closest thing to a new feature is I'm going to try to get it in there so it saves the compressed image file into the project rather than the uncompressed image file, but that won't be a new feature really. It'll just be a correction of the old feature. But I'm going to fix some bugs and crashes and things like that. The only new thing will be that it will take translations. You will have a preferences folder, and in there will be language options based on what languages you have loaded in your system. And like I have 2 different options for Japanese here. So, and it will be live updating. So if we get a community translation for your language, if someone puts that out, and I'm going to put up the files on GitHub for this, so anyone can pull the files. They can use the free Qt tool to read the file and then do translations however they want to do translations. And there are a lot of lines to translate, but many of them you could leave for now and just get all the buttons and stuff. So if you have a language you want working and you understand it, you can go through, translate it. You can make a file that will then, you just drop into the translations folder of anybody's HueForge at that point, and they will be able to then come in here and say, I want to run that language file. I want to run Spanish, French, Japanese from your translation, Google Translate, whatever, however you want to do it. It will automatically read it at startup time, find those, list them, and then you'll be able to pick one. Now, every time you change languages, it's going to shut down HueForge and you're going to have to start up again. Just fair warning. But you'll be able to do it. So I have been told also that on live streams, it is hard to read my screen sometimes. I did bring the font size up, which you can do on yours as well. There are some issues sometimes here. It is very hard to get these font sizes properly spaced, but I can make the font sizes a little bit bigger so that you guys can see better here. It does mean I have to rearrange my menus a bit, but that's a good thing I can go into here. We can make a menu, we can make a new layout. I can say, let's just move the color shift up here. I can say here, Windows, save layout, and I can name it Livestream. And that will now be my live stream layout. The layout doesn't save the font size, so that would just be basically like I need to up the font size a couple to get here. Or I could change my screen scaling and get that to fix. So to make it easier to read. So I'm trying to make this easier. Hopefully this is a bit easier to see what I'm doing. Okay, so slider stuff. Again, you can bring your color sliders back up if you want, but you can do everything on here that you could do on the color sliders. Control, click on a color slider, lets you drag and drop that slider somewhere else, that filament somewhere else. Again, Z zeroes out that slider, delete would delete that slider. And you can hit T and then adjust your TD. Obviously be careful about adjusting TD when you're changing an actual filament, because you're basically saying this filament is different than it was, and that could be correct. You might be like, hey, I printed this thing, I printed this print and it didn't look like this. It looked like, you know, come here and adjust it. It looked more like this. Okay, well the red is lower TD. You know, it was, or maybe a different color, but, or it looked really purple and I didn't really get much red out of it. Okay, well maybe the red's a really high TD red, like if you don't have a TD1 or something. Check it. If you just mouse wheel or arrow key while it's in TD, it will adjust by 0.5. If you hold down shift, it will adjust by 0.2. And this will actually let you hit every possible value of TD with a little bit of thought. You can get to everything. You can get to every tenth, and we're really only scaling by tenths. Okay. Any questions before I move on? Anything like in 090 you don't know how to do that you did know how to do in an earlier version? I'll be happy to look through those, hit some of those. I will say, by the way, that text will always be cleaner in standard mode than color match. It's an unfortunate byproduct of how aggressive color match matches. And then anti-aliasing of text. Text in particular gets anti-aliased, and that anti-aliasing means there's a bunch of different colors surrounding the text. So it gets very tricky to figure out how that should be matched. And then the other common things that, the other common thing that you can do to crash is you can do new project with no project loaded, and that's a pretty easy crash. If your default settings have a 0.04 millimeter layer height, then the crash almost never happens, if ever. If you have 0.08, it happens often. What is the best way to verify the TD of filament in the library? From Marvin. Good question. It depends on whether you have and or are willing to spend for a TD1S, and also whether how many filaments you have. So let's talk about it. Let's say you don't want to buy a TD1 or a TD1S, which, by the way, released by Big Tree Tech. You can now pre-order a TD1S. They should ship no later than the end of June, and their retail price is the same as the assembled units were before. They are not selling a kit, but they are selling the circuit boards from the kit. So if you want to do a self-source, and you want to buy the lux sensor and the RGB sensor and the screen and the Pi, and you want to print your own case and you want to use the same things, you can now get the circuit boards for them. And I think it's $10 for the pair of boards. They come with the LEDs, but nothing else attached to them. Oh, I just zoomed myself in with my finger gestures. Let me fix that. You don't need to see my gigantic head. There we go. So those are available for $10. You will have to pay $10 for the firmware as well. But that way you can build it from what you may have on hand or from parts that you could share with other people for cheaper, if that's your thing. Don't expect a whole lot of support in that case. If you buy the TD1S, which is smaller but otherwise the same, then you should get full Big Tree Tech support, and they should be able to ship pretty much anywhere in the world. So pre-orders are going on now. And then, anyway, so the TD1S, or TD1, is the easiest way to confirm your filaments. And it's right up to about 15 TD. At about 15, both HueForge and the TD1S start to break down because we just don't have that many data sample points. And you start dealing with issues in HueForge, like it just doesn't actually scatter at thin layer heights. You can often fix that by just increasing the TD until it looks right. So, okay, let's say you have a print. No, TD1S is not a monthly subscription. It's a one-time purchase. You pay $80 and you get the firmware. If you want beta firmwares, you can join AJ's Patreon for $5 a month, I believe. But that's only if you want the beta firmwares. And again, he's like me. Beta firmwares are a little extra. In my case, commercial users. For him, it's Patreon members. But they're going to be released to everybody. In this case, that will be the one new thing. Firmware 2.0 will release with HueForge 091. It'll be included in 091, so you won't have to have the Patreon to get access to it. You just have to wait a few minutes. It was about a month. And that was just him basically rewarding the people who've been supporting him on Patreon. Okay, so then, so TD1S doesn't have a monthly, and HueForge doesn't have a monthly. Um, yeah, he definitely helps the self-source, but I'm just saying he's not guaranteed to help a self-source, like if you got bad parts and things like that. But he will help as much as he can, and it will be way, way, way easier to spend those $10 than to spend all that time soldering all those wires to each other and stuff and trying to fit them in the case. If you want to self-source, you should 100% buy the circuit boards. I don't know the release time on those. I assume it's basically the same by June 3rd or by June 30th they'll be shipping, but I don't know for certain on those. If you already did self-source, you're already licensed, you should be able to get the circuit boards and just clean up your installation if you want for $10. Though you may never want to open your case again, and I respect that. Okay, so what was I saying? I don't remember where I was. Oh, right. How do you test your TDs? Okay, so there's another way you can do it, is you made a print, and it's not right, and you can just adjust the TDs in HueForge. But the preferred way to do it in general, and that's just faster, right? The preferred way to do it is, I need to open project. In Documents HueForge Tools, there's a file called the Seashell test. Now, the Seashell test is literally just a file you save, and then you print. And if you see here, the first swap is here. You can click on this to see it, the ruler. So that 0.56 millimeters, and then this is whatever color you're testing. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be red, could be blue, doesn't matter. And you just print this model, which is small. It's a 80 by 75. And you take this into the slicer, you add the one swap at 0.08 millimeter layers. You can print everything underneath here at 0.16 millimeter layers, so the black layers print in like no time. And then you print the top layers. And then you either bring it into HueForge and start adjusting TD to compare, or you look at the PDF file that comes with it with some guides about where you're reading. And what you're looking for is where things are starting to change colors. So let's just change this. So if I change this down to like, a 1, I'm not going to save this, so this isn't going to hurt me. So just FYI, if I were to try to leave, it's going to tell me that I've changed this filament, and do I want to save it? And I would have to say no. Or if I hit Save Library. But as long as I don't do either one of those things, then I'm not really changing the filament, and I can always just undo what I did. So what we're looking for is the last places we see the dark color showing through the base color. If you never do, then it's lower than 1. But it's hard to show much lower than 1. Like this is 0.5. It basically is solid, right? Here's 1. You see a little bit. 1.5. You see a little bit more. At 2, you start to see some up here and here. You start to see 2 tones in these locations. So what you're looking for is like, where do I see multiple shades? Where do I see like new spots showing up that are changing colors? As you get to 3, you get this section here. You're going up more towards the tips. You get this. I believe this shows up. Yeah, this here kind of shows up at 3. At 4, you see these 2 in good strength. At 5, you start to very faintly see this in the middle. So it's all about that. Hey, Adam, welcome. And so what you're looking for is basically, so at 6, you're really starting to see this. You see 2 colors in the middle faintly here, but you're definitely seeing solid changing colors here. So you're starting to look at where you're seeing the colors bleed through. You also see way more down here. You've got these sections here. So you're comparing 2 options, and it looks like somewhere around a 10 is very close to the image, maybe a little higher than that. And this method is good for up to about a 10 to 12. It becomes hard to tell the difference between like a 10 and a 12. But in general, that's going to get you 95% of the filaments out there. Don't highly recommend transparent filaments, but this is your method, your best method for testing. Why is it your best? There are faster methods. You can print little steps. It'll be faster. But the step method doesn't really give you a real world read on how your printer is going to print a HueForge. It gives you it's kind of more an ideal. This is the ideal TD you can get for your filament. rather than this is like a real world test that can give you a good TD value off of it. So that is the seashell test. That is the recommended way if you haven't already printed something. But I would say if you've already printed something, go in there and try adjusting TDs on the thing you've already printed. Like you're like, hey, this is way more red than I thought, or way more yellow than I thought. Try adjusting that and see if you can get it to look like what you're holding in your hand, especially if you've only got a couple colors. If you've got a bazillion colors, it's going to be really hard to do. But if you're doing a 2, 3, 4 color HueForge, and especially if you're like one color is way off, then you can go in there and adjust that one color until the prediction looks right, and then say, that's what the TD of that color is for me. Nice. EA888, did you make it to Rocky Mountain this year, or no Rocky Mountain for you this year? By the way, Rocky Mountain was crazy. It was really good, but it was a lot of people, a lot of stuff going on, and we did an entire wall. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I assume most of you have if you're in office hours. An entire HueForge wall, 16 by 8 of stones, with some windows in the middle. Don't look below the table levels, but above, and actually it did go down below the tables a fair amount, but it wasn't all the way to the floor. But it was basically, I would say it was, 6 by 8 or 6 by 16 wall of solid HueForge stones that we all printed. Adam and Danny printed a bazillion of them. I printed some big ones, and then the stained glass windows and the backlit windows, and then my dad and Ian and someone else printed some more stones. Cyanide Sugar printed some more stones. And you missed Cyanide Sugar if you couldn't come to RMRRF. She was there, had a great time. So maybe we can talk her into another one. It was a really, really fun weekend. It was kind of nonstop once the doors opened. And then Danny and I did a talk actually Danny did most of the talk, which was by plan. That was planned. In the hall, and they actually did live stream it this year, and there is a recording up online. I think Danny says it starts at like 5:08 in the stream. So that is how that works. I'm checking to see if anyone has sent me more office hours images. I did. I got one. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. 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 So if anyone has another office hours image they want to send, a challenge image, it goes to steve@thehueforge.com, and you can send it to me with a title, with a subject office hours image. And if, later today or tomorrow you come up with one, just send it to me. I will be doing office hours again next week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So U.S. hours. It won't really be useful for those of you in the U.K. or Germany or France or Europe. But exciting news about the translations. I do have people working on French. I have someone working on German. I'm not sure if German will be ready for release. And I have people working on Japanese, Spanish, and Chinese. So we will be getting some translations to start with, but again, I will be making the translation files publicly available and make it easy for the community to collaborate and come up with better translations as far as they're concerned. And the community can, say, hey, we want, like the French community is discussing right now, do they want color pop and color match to be just English quoted strings basically, or do they want to translate them into French to mean what they mean in English? Which one's better for them? So there's, and I'm absolutely open to any of that. So that's going to be up to the communities. And again, you'll be able to drop in new translations after the fact if you find a new one, or if your language needs one. I will say that machine translation has been pretty garbage at this because, they've got all these buttons that are just one word or maybe two words with no real context. And so it can be very, very hard for auto translation to deal with that. A lot of people have said that's some very, very weird, what insert language here that your auto translations came up with. So, okay. So, please go ahead and keep typing questions in the chat. I'll keep looking for them, especially things about 090. Oh, I did see several people have not realized this. The new feature that you can type in a hex code here. If you start with a hash sign, you can put in a hex code here, and it will search on that hex code and try to find the closest color to that hex code. So this was a green, this was bright green. If I did bright blue, it would give me blues. If I did red, and it will automatically append zeros to the end. So if I just did that, and then like, you know, I could do 77, then we're going to be looking at like an orange because it's red and green. I don't need to add the 00 in the end technically, but it won't pre-append zeros. It doesn't know that you want, you know, green and blue. So, so anyway, you can do that if that's useful to you. All right. Okay. Welcome, Alt F4. You're a happy man at parties. Okay, so the first image I got was this one, which is like a patch from NASA. Now, first of all, I think it probably was supposed to be cut out, but I guess it was a scan, but it was saved as the JPEG, so you get the white background. This one is interesting because it's really not a very good file. If we zoom in on here, we see that the file has jaggies all over the place. It's really not a very good file. But if we look at this if we come over here and click on the luminance, we can see that a lot of stuff is at different luminance levels. So it's possible we could make this mostly work with just standard mode. And I'm going to give that a shot. You know what? I think this is not the original. I think this is my downsampled version. So let me grab the actual original. Yep. I'm going to grab the actual original. There we go. Here's the actual original. I downsampled to try to make it a little bit nicer. Let me pull it back to the color. There's all these speckles in it. It's all these color shifts in it that make it much, much harder. Like, the quality of this is going to make it very hard to get a high quality HueForge out of it, but we're going to try. We're going to try. And I did some modification to it. So, okay. So Mirza Ali asks, hi, can you explain what the slicer view represents? Looks very different from the displayed image in color match. Also, where can I find the spike removal option? Okay, two good questions. First off, this model geometry is where spike removal is, but that is likely docked. It comes docked with your filament library like this. I think it's under, but it comes like this. So it's hidden. If you have, but that's hidden because on a low resolution monitor, there's no room for it. So the first thing I always do is pull that out and make it its own thing, and then spike removal is right here. Okay, so that's first answer. Second, what does slicer view do? What slicer view does is show you what the slicer view is. So what does that mean? Well, here you can see it's basically white. It turns off all blending and just shows you what the topmost color is for any pixel in the image. This is useful because when you actually do go into the slicer, here you can see now I move this slider up one, right? From here I only have a little bit of black showing, and from here I now have, like, all these regions are much blacker, and now they show through. So it's showing you what the slicer will show you without any blending involved. That's what slicer view does. It's kind of a sanity check to make sure that your slice is correct and that the colors look right. You know, sometimes people will say, I'm missing 2 layers or 3 layers. And if you compare the slicer views and they look exactly the same, then it almost certainly means you've got a spike that got cut off in the slicer, some thin feature that got cut off in the slicer and doesn't get printed. And that's why you don't have it. It's not a big deal. It's just not visible. All right, so I'm going to try to make this happen. We're going to find a blue. So blue would be the next obvious color. I think this is where we're going to actually have the most trouble, is that this blue is going to, yeah, so the NASA blue is going to be really hard to get without breaking all these other things. But let's bring a gray in here. See, yeah, that gray is going to be kind of blue. We actually want a low TD gray. That's a little bit brighter. So let's see, let's find a gray like this. Funny. All right, well, we'll just do ash gray. That'll be a brick wall. Okay. And then we got some white there. That works okay. And now we kind of, this is where I think we're going to have trouble. This orange-brown here is going to conflict with the gray. Yep, the light gray is going to be in the same range. This light brown is going to be about there. So it's overwhelmingly gray here. Now we could make this taller to give ourselves more room. We could adjust the curve profile. But honestly, we're going to have trouble. We didn't even put the red in, and the red would be somewhere in this bottom range to be red. Yeah, that's where the red is. So this is going to be very hard to do to get these exact colors here. Now maybe you could use gray picks and separate them out and get them all stacked up, but it's going to be very hard because of that. But it's going to be very hard to do in color match as well because of all the different specklings in here. But let's give it a try. Come over here. I'm going to go to 0.04 millimeter layers just to give myself more room to work with. And then we'll use actual color. We'll use filament color or colors from the image here. The lowest TD yellow I have is a 4, so I'm going to put that in there. So I hit T, and I mouse wheeled to adjust the TD of this color. So I just know that I don't have a yellow that's below 4, so I need to give myself that room. Let's get a low TD white though, because I don't need much white. Let's do a cold white. The cold whites are low. Polylight Pro. It's a 0.5 to a 1, depends on the system, but 0.5 to a 1. So we'll grab that, and then we have this. We'll grab our dark orange here. Now notice, see, it's not matching the gray anymore very well. We'll grab our lighter orange here. We're dropping them on existing filaments, so it won't overcome the TD of that filament. The TD will stay the same as whatever the filament was before. So that's a benefit of using filaments, but it can be often impractical to use filaments, if I'm being honest. And then we can grab this lighter gray here, and this even lighter gray here. There we go, to give ourselves some of this. It looks like we need a little more room on this orange to get the colors. Oh, let's change this to C-Lab maybe. Yeah. We can take this red, probably make this red down. Maybe even put the black, maybe do black gray with the blue underneath. It doesn't like that blue. Let's grab this blue, a darker color. There we go. Dark blue with red. And then we need a darker gray in here somewhere. We don't even really have a black in here, but that doesn't seem to be hurting us very much. We could probably put a black maybe under the red. There we go. So this isn't terrible, but we have some pretty rough areas. Actually, that worked out pretty well. But because of all these color shades in here, it's going to be hard to get these colors all smooth and nice. Because we have all these different shades in here because of the different colors in the image. So what I did was I downsampled the image first. So that's what this is. I downsampled the image, and that actually helped a lot. Just getting rid of a lot of the noise. It's not perfect. We have these edges here that aren't great. Our yellow isn't really showing up very well in the downsampled image. It's kind of been lost there. I did clip it as well, and this was actually an issue with the way I cut out the way I quantized. I actually quantized this image, so I downsampled it and quantized it, and that I over quantized. So here it is re-quantized so that it's much better. Now, what might make most sense here is actually to move this white along down here with the grays, and that will give us a better issue with none of these yellow borders around the white. So that is probably the cleanest I'm going to get that. I did do some editing on that to make that work. I've done an upsampled version too, but I don't really think the upsampled version is significantly better. It's very, very similar to the original. So hopefully this is helpful. I don't know who did this one. For this particular image, I actually do think vectorizing it would be a good idea. I think it would be hard to vectorize, though. Vectorize would probably catch on all those weird little corners. You have to be able to have you would have to work pretty hard to get that to vectorize well, I think. I think that actually it was a very high resolution scan. I think that downsampling that scan... All right, am I back? Hopefully. Tell me if I am back. Okay, we're back. Glad I caught that. All right, let's go back here. All right, cool. All right, so what I was saying, someone asked about vectoring. I think you'd have a harder time vectoring than doing some quantizing. Color quantizing is going to be your better choice here. Downsampling the original image really helped. And then I did an AI upscale, but it really didn't help that much compared to just a decent quantize with enough colors, but not too many colors. But the source image did make this one pretty tricky. Okay, would love to know if HueForge can do single layer. No. You cannot do HueForges in a single layer. Even if you could do them flat, which is something I know technically how to do, but have not sat down and done that, it would not be a single layer. It would be multiple layers. It just would be, they would be below the surface rather than above the surface. But currently HueForge does not support any kind of workflow that will let you do flat surfaces. And in fact, when it does, it will be a plugin. It will be an added plugin. Because core functionality of HueForge will always be layer swap support. And that would require an AMS. So the question about vectorizing is a good question. But I think for this particular image, vectorizing is actually going to be very complicated and difficult. Interestingly, it doesn't really like... There we go. It likes that white better. So it wasn't matching. Some of these colors are matching weird. There we go. All right. Okay. So that was the first image. And there's some like this gray here is a little bit tan. So, oops. Double clicking, by the way, will do that. This gray down here is a little bit tan, so you might want to actually grab a little bit of that tan gray to make it match better in there. That kind of thing. Okay. So that's that one. Let's reset everything. I'm going to go back. Oh, still the right layer height. Okay. I have a dumb noob question. I have a situation where I need to remove layers if the same color. What is the process to remove sections or layers of the color core? You can't oh, so like here, are you saying like you have these equal signs and you need to get rid of these layers in here? Is that the question? Because you just hold down control, and then arrow key or mouse wheel, not drag, you can't drag, but arrow key or mouse wheel until those equal color layers are gone. And then you've gotten rid of them. It's going to make the thing smaller, but that's what you want. You don't want to do extra work you don't need to do. Wow, my blend depth is tiny. Let's increase my blend depth. Okay. All right, so I'm going to bring in the next image. This is not necessarily the order they were received. I represent this image a little bit too much sometimes. This last week I've been super tired. I don't know why. Hold on, I'm getting... okay. So here's an image someone gave me. This one, if we go to standard mode, we're almost certainly going to see that in luminance mode, several of our colors overlap in luminance. So like the brain is the same color as his pants kind of thing. So you're not going to be able to separate colors that way. This light blue and this light pink are effectively the same. So this is definitely a color match image. So you can see already we get a little bit better even just going from the black and white. Now color match, you need to set the color core, the mesh core, before you set the color core. The mesh core is how you define where the colors are vertically in the mesh. Now, some people look at the image and go from the bottom of the image and for the first introduction of the color to the next to the top of the image, but that is not what you need to think about. That is not going to help you. What you want to do is go from the bottom of the image to the background of the image, the foreground of the image where possible, and you want to make the color blends as continuous as you can while you're doing it. That's just going to give you the best results. It's not required. You can have some discontinuity, especially when you have a lot of edges and stuff, but that's going to be the easiest. Now, there's a couple of issues going on with this particular image that might make it a little tricky, and I might argue that if you can recolor these letters, that is the single best thing you can do right now. But let's just start with it as it's going. I would want, unless I wanted this as a coaster, which I could actually see, like, or a trivet or something, I would want the background to be at the bottom because that's going to take the least time to print, right? So ideally the background's at the bottom to save time, and you do that by, I would just move these, control mouse wheel these up, grab this color, and now it is the background color. So it's now picked that this height here, the base layer here, is the background color, and so that's where it is. Now, if you wanted it somewhere else, if you said, no, you know what, the background, I do want it to be a coaster, then you put it at the top. No problem. It's there now. Now it's at the top, and now everything else is recessed into this picture. And honestly, that's going to give us better words. Almost certainly, the words are going to look better this way. So I am actually going to play it this way. I am actually going to do it this way. And by doing this way, it actually allows me to do some pretty straightforward blends from browns through to this like background color here, this base color here. They all make sense. I can go from a dark brown to a red to this orangey brown to this kind of orange color to this, or to the background color, and it all kind of nicely blends. Now I know that this color is probably going to be a higher TD, so let's give myself a little more room for that. Move things up, and then we'll grab the color I expect to go beneath it, something like this. Though that looks like there might be a layer of this in the middle there. And then we'll grab probably the red. Honestly, the red is probably the next thing that's going to make the most sense to fit there. See that hits. And then we'll grab this dark brown. And then we don't really want the black to be all the way in the background because that gives you all these fringes on the side. What are these fringes? These are the sides of the layers. These are literally physically the side of the print of all the different layers. So we don't really want those all the way in the back. These are thick lines, so it's a little bit easier to deal with. But also, the eyes and stuff I think are in the front. So let's move these lines up above the white here. So we have a black region here. And so now those lines are right in the middle. They're still benefiting from being behind the main background, so they still get good edges, but they are right in the middle now. And then we need to deal with these grays. The grays actually are kind of okay as they are, but we need a pink. The pink's a little tricky, figuring out where that pink belongs. Technically, maybe, and I'm thinking about how I would do this with filament, is I might put the pink here. And that actually works fairly well. Not perfectly. It puts some fringing around these edges, but much less. You're probably not going to see that very much. There's only a few layers. And then we're in pretty good shape. Now, I might consider trying to blend up to this black. It depends on what filaments you have. So if you have the grays for this, maybe I wouldn't. But if you don't, maybe I would blend up to black from white. We can bring this all down here. And actually, as you see, from white, probably, even though these would be on top of the gray here in like a sane world, because we're kind of not in sane world, I'm going to put these below. I'm going to put a blue down here, and that's going to be there we go. Now, so we have it mostly stacked up. The only thing we're missing is like a bright white, so which I think it's just there's not enough layers here. There you go. So now we have the white edges around the eyes. So there we go. That's how I would stack that up. Now let's talk about how you would actually color it with filaments. So this is the mesh core. Now you can copy the whole mesh core over. It will replace everything, but all these non-filament colors aren't going to work. Like, you can't use these. So now we're going to need to look at, so the bottom here is pretty much okay. We just need to find a color that's like that blue. We might be able to even use a gray here, or use a light blue, like this color here. Let's click over here. That's kind of light, but maybe you like the pants to stand out a little bit more, but we could probably just use like this king rune silver maybe, and get something very similar to the blue or the cyan here. And get something very similar. If that's too light for us, or too, we could bring this gray down here and mute it a bit. Now I would recommend keeping it above, we want to make our base thickness work as well as we can, but so anyway, that could be, if you wanted to mute that a bit, you could do that. We could bring these down a bit and get our light bluish color. This gray is pretty much perfect. This is just a black, so we'll just get rid of that right now. This mostly just helps make sure that we have enough layers of black to get a good solid black here. This dark brown, I think the Epex chocolate brown is going to be our best option here, just to get it dark quickly. Might be too dark. I think the chrominal is going to be darker because of the higher TD. Even though it's a lighter color, it's not going to be able to lighten up that black as much. Guess we could bring the black down a little bit. We have this pink. Now, I actually think that what we want is a red that's similar. Maybe the king rune red here. And then, oh, well, maybe not. Let's go with the lower TD red. Okay, and then we'll just put a white here. Put the same white here we're using so we don't make a new color. Ah, see, that doesn't work. Because it expects, yeah, that's not going to work. Maybe if we put a red here. Nope. Okay. So this one might be one where we say, let's just flip the order. If we come over here and we hit Control R, highlight and Control R, then maybe we can bring the red here and get a pink out of it by just adding some white. And here I'm not getting as pink as I want, so I'm adding TD to the I'm adding TD to this so that it comes closer. Let's use a different white. I normally use the Polysonic white. It's a great white. 7.4 is going to give me more color blending here. And maybe we want more of a red. So Polysonic red here to get more of a pink. It's up to you whether you're okay with that pink color or not. It's not the same as the image, but in the ears it looks fine. Here it looks a little red. So there's going to be a little bit of tweaking there to get it where you want it. But I'm okay with that for saving some filament. Let's put the problem here is blend. Oh no, we might be okay. Oops. Disable this one. And then what's this color? That's too much. We need, I guess, the beige. This is going to be much darker than you think, I think. Much more white. We could go with a vanilla yellow here. This background color is going to be one of the hardest to hit. Maybe the terracotta. That's probably too dark without a white in here. But it's hard to find this exact shade of color. So you're going to probably have to make some Polylite cream, maybe. Looks pretty good, though. Again, I think it's going to be a little whiter than that looks like. And then it's a matter of do we really care enough to make this transition exactly the way it looks? Do we do a little yellow here to get a shade that we like? That's not bad. But now we're looking at colors. That's about 10 colors. It's 8 colors. Okay, so we're perfect for a 2 AMS system. So that is how I'd go after that one. If you really want this pink to be pink, you could find a better pink. Probably like an opaque pink. Like here, this premium pure magenta. That would work pretty well there. That would be more pink. But then maybe I'd try to trade something else off and get rid of it so that I'm not using as many colors. Maybe I'd try to get rid of this unique gray and just accept that, or maybe put a brown underneath here to get the color and not, yeah, there we go. Then we're still at 7 color or 8 color, or that's 9 colors now. Where do we? Oh, that's Polysonic. The pink. How are we at 9? I got rid of this color down here. I put chrominal chestnut here, here, and here. So I thought that would be 8, but it's saying 9. Chestnut, cyan, white, blue, gray, black, red, magenta, yellow, cream. Okay, that is 9 filaments. So that's the trade-off, is getting down to the number of colors you really want. Like potentially we could put this gray on both sides of the black. Come on. If we didn't mind the coffee being gray. We do have the issue with the coffee cup being kind of pinkish here. If we're not using, maybe the cream is better here. No, if we're not using the white here, then the coffee cup is a little bit less brown. We could potentially use a different brown too. But anyway, that is how I'd go after that image, and then it's just a matter of picking exact colors. So I picked again, I looked at what the background was, and I decided for the lettering's sake to put the background at the top. So what would happen if I put the background at the bottom? If I took this at the bottom, I would need to move both of these things. And then I would need to grab this guy here. Oh, these aren't high enough. Yeah. And we'd get that. Which wouldn't be terrible. The text actually looks pretty good. Oh, Christophe, thank you. And the French translation is in progress. All right, so that is that one that I've done. And this one actually worked okay because the lines are so thick. There wasn't a big deal, and there's a big distinction between them. So that did actually work out okay. It wasn't so terrible to do it that way. I probably would reverse the order of these colors, though, because it makes more sense to me to go dark to light. There you go. And that would take less time to print, for sure. Okay, so then let's look at the next image I have. Going through office hours images. Let me check one more time to make sure that no one has sent me another image. I do not have another image. Okay, so I have the images that people have sent me. All right, so let's grab the next one. All right, this one is a bit complicated. All right, so this wanted poster. To be perfectly frank, this would be a whole lot easier if you literally just cut out the rectangle in the middle and treated that as a separate HueForge. And either made it dark so that it could be at the base color and you just did the wanted poster as one HueForge and then the other one as a separate HueForge and reassembled them. We can do most of this, but like, because the poster colors are going to overlap with skin tones and things like that, it's going to be a little bit tricky for sure. So, and then also, again, it would be very hard. The goggles are going to be at the same level as the poster. So wherever the poster is, the goggles are going to be, except for the strap. So, because right now, currently, you cannot tell it to only match certain colors at certain heights. So this is what I'm planning for 0.92 would be, you'd be able to either like draw a box or scribble in this area and say, probably drawing a box here would be best. All of these must match between these two layer heights. And then you'd say for the rest of it, it can match anywhere or it has to match below that layer height. And so you could say, okay, the whole poster is going to match below or above, whichever your choice is. And then that part it would really treat it as if it's two separate color match HueForges stacked on top of each other by region of the image. So let's look at this as a whole, as a single image. I just will say that this wanted poster part is so, commonly used as an image, like it would be very easy to do. Now, I do normally boost my color match images a little bit in brightness. I just find it makes it easier to match for whatever reason. So There's a texture to this image, which is kind of cool. Will you stop doing that? It should drag. Okay. There's a texture to this image, which we would like to keep. There is some... Okay, this is a JPEG, and I can see some JPEG artifacting around here, which is going to make this more difficult to do cleanly. But it's not awful, and this would probably fix with a pass-through, an upsampler, an AI upsampler. So let's just look at this, though. Do we want... I think because of the way the skin tones and everything are, I think if we treat this as if it's kind of a window, and the wanted poster has a window inset into it with the character, we're probably going to be the happiest with the results. But we can rearrange that in the future if we need to. So I'm going to go ahead, move the black up. Oh, we'll switch over to this side. Again, we got to do the mesh core first. I'm going to cancel that. And then we're going to get ourselves our colors. We got a really dark brown here we want to grab for all of the text. And then we have this like medium brown here. Probably a little bit higher TD for that. And that gets us a lot of the poster, but the brightest the poster gets is this, not actually full white. And that can actually be beneficial to us to keep that separated. So let's move that all the way up to the top. So we basically matched the background, and now we can start grabbing parts of the image here. So like the background of the image is actually pretty white. So let's put that white at the bottom. TD of that doesn't really matter because it's at the bottom. Then we're going to blend everything up to this blue. So if we give that blue a realistic TD of maybe like 4, maybe 5. We have the Azure blue that's about a 5. We can get most of the shades of the hair that way. Then trying to figure out how we want to do this. We probably are going to want to blend up from the brighter red to the darker red, brown to the black. So this is actually going to match brown pretty well, but there's this like reddish brown here too. So we'll grab that. I think we could maybe separate these two. Yeah. And then we want more of the red here. This would be like a 4, 3.5, 4 TD. This would be probably like a 1.5. We can get some shades there. This orangey color here is matching with the red, but we probably want it matching up top with the goggles. So I'm going to put that right above the black to match with the goggles. And then we do have some slightly darker red, so we'll put that up here so we get a couple more shades. And we need to clean up the transition a little bit. We don't really have a good gray at the moment. So let's blend the blue into gray, because that's kind of a natural transition we can do. Into first the lighter gray and then the darker gray. That will shield the red a little bit from the blue. There is a really bright blue that we haven't blended in here. So let's add that there so we can get that blue in like the shirt and stuff. And then we have this issue with this white sometimes grabbing and then that white sometimes grabbing for the teeth. And the teeth should be down at the bottom. So we'll grab some of those. This very light blue can be in here to make sure they match. And then we just need to grab some of these areas. Now this is JPEG artifacting that's causing this here that we're getting. There we go. We've got the teeth pretty much cleaned up. That's actually pretty good in my opinion. Really the only issue we have here is this kind of orangey area where this is really more of a peachy skin. But we're limited by the poster and the skin being really, really close in color. If we go to C-Lab 2, maybe we can pull that out, but it's going to be very tricky. This is the major reason why I would separate it. We don't have the yellow here. I didn't put the yellow in anywhere. And we don't have the skin tone quite right. We could, if I make this taller, which is already fairly thick, we could try putting a yellow below here, off the gray. Then we can get our yellow. and then try getting some of these skin tones in here that kind of do blend reasonably in here. But they are going to kind of conflict a bit with the stuff up top because they are very similar shades to the posters. You'll see like the posters now turned all kinds of weird colors because of what we've done here now. So this is why I really would look at this and say I'm probably going to need to separate it into two. We could get a few things here. We could get the yellow. We could get the yellow and put it up here. That would blend reasonably, and we'd have this yellow would be tall, but it would be there. We could get that yellow pretty easily. But really, we'd like to have that face down with the rest of everything here, and I don't think we can do that very easily at all with the poster colors the way they are. So that would be my recommendation, would be to separate those two into two HueForges and then just reassemble them either in the slicer with enough depth or more reasonably, I think, just glue it in after the fact. So that's how I would go for that, I think. How do I grab a section of sliders to move all at once instead of one at a time? Okay, good question. There's two things you can do. Again, I can control and then mouse wheel or arrow key, and it'll move everything above this slider up and down. If I hit Alt, it'll move everything below this slider up and down, including this slider. And then I can highlight, and I can cut and paste sliders if I want. And I can also invert them. I could control R and then flip them over. So those are all things I have the ability to do. Would it work better with the black at the top? I don't think so. I really don't think so, because black in the middle is your nice neutral. Black at the top, you mean if I blended up to the wanted poster text? I still don't think so. I think that would be... The problem is this... Oh, so that you're sharing skin? Is that the idea? If I'm going to try to share skin, though, the problem really is that I need to put the skin tones in with the wanted poster tones, and that's going to start making the wanted poster pretty wonky. Like, that's the real issue here, is that I'm going to screw up the wanted poster by putting the skin tones in. Because I can get the skin tones much better in the wanted poster, right? That makes the skin tone significantly better, but now the wanted poster gets super wonky. That yellow, the yellow is also grabbing in the wanted poster where I don't really feel like it should. Maybe I need more specific wanted poster colors in here, in the middle, to get them to match right. But it's because these shades of color are so similar. So we either need the ability to manually grab this whole thing and say, guess what, you can match from here to here. Because, you know, we had the wanted poster done pretty well with just these colors, right? So, like, just these colors here made a pretty... Oh, actually, I think the white was gone, right? Just these colors here made the wanted poster pretty darn well. So really what we'd like to be able to do is just grab this section and say, you're from here down, and this section is only from here up. And then we can say, okay, that's so that it can only match in those regions. So really we want to be able to stack matches within a image. And so that's... So Sam, if you did it separately, and you made the wanted poster, or the second... Well... Dang it, I tapped my mic. Thank you. Okay, so you asked about putting it at the top. So where is this green coming from? I don't remember grabbing this green. Is it down here? It's a weird color. So obviously this doesn't look good, but if I were to just do the wanted poster by itself, if I grabbed all of these up here and cut them out and said, here's what we get, and I did the wanted poster, it would be up to 1.28 millimeters. So I could set it to be 1.28 millimeters tall, and then the next, when I just did the inside, I could say, okay, I'm going to set that to have a base thickness of like 1.4 millimeters, give myself enough room to get back to white or whatever color I want, and then do my do that one on top of it. You could put them together in the slicer and just make it, just make sure it starts above the wanted poster. You could go the other way too. I mean, you obviously could put the poster on the outside and the drawing on the inside. The only issue with that is now you made the poster really tall, but you could then make, like if you're saying, okay, I need, so if we look at this, you're saying I need, 2 millimeters of height. You could make the wanted poster's base thickness 2 millimeters or 2.2 millimeters and then just print it all at 0.2 millimeters up until like the actual HueForge part, and like with a taller base thickness, and it wouldn't take a whole lot of time. And you could do infill instead of solid all the way if you wanted, and reduce the actual HueForge print time. You could do that too. No, wait, sorry. If you did that, you'd really just want to inset it inside, because if you're going to make it really tall and put the other one in the inside of it, then you have to print at HueForge layer heights for the inside. So if I were going to make the background tall, I would want to print the whoever's wanted as a separate print and insert it into a cutout in that area. If I were going to do the wanted poster as the background and the character in the front, then you could do it where you do them separately and then stack them together in the slicer, and it's just one big tall HueForge if you set the base thicknesses correctly. Does that make sense? Hopefully, again, this will be something that HueForge will allow you to do in version 092. That's kind of the goal of 092. That's one of the major goals of 092, is being able to split color match into regions. Okay. I have one that came 2 weeks ago, or came from the previous one like 4 weeks ago, that I didn't get to here. Now, first of all, it kind of just looks cool in black and white, but if we look at this in luminance, which is kind of already is, okay, so the only issue with this one is that we have these blends from magenta into dark and then into light. So the most obvious thing to do here again is to figure out which one we want on top and which one we want on the bottom. It sure looks like the magenta is over the blue in most cases. So we'll move the black to the middle. We'll put the magenta above the black, and magenta is normally about a 1 TD, so we'll just leave it like that. It does look like maybe there's some lighter magentas in here, like really light magenta, so we'll grab that and give ourselves a little bit more control. I don't even know if we need the white here. I think we don't even want the white there. Maybe we just want a couple layers of white here, so we don't match any of the lower stuff. And then we're going to want to put a dark, we're going to want to match these shades. And this is like a bluish, so we're going to want to grab like a cyan or something in here. These are all like blue shades, and we want a white at the bottom. So honestly, this one isn't that hard with the mindset of putting the black in the middle. I will say you probably want to do, even though you're blending up, you want to disable a layer of black to make sure you get solid black. And then it's just a matter of getting the levels you want where you want it. We don't really have the background very well. And the Megadeth text isn't accounting for any of these other colors that we have. And that's kind of going to be up to you to figure out how you want to deal with that. So maybe we could put this below, bring the white up and get some of those colors underneath. It's not really pulling this super bright white here. That's an off-color white, so we'll grab that. There, now the text looks better. And they were pretty good. I think we're in pretty good shape here. Might grab this super bright white here and put it here so it matches up a little bit better. But that looks pretty good. That's probably what I'd do right there. Okay, that one was not as hard as I thought. It's mostly about figuring out what order. We don't have this background very well. Like this background section stuff, that's going to be really hard to get. If that's super important to you, we're going to need to spend some time in there getting those. Maybe we can do it that way. Yeah, that's working. Okay, now we at least can see it. That's, you know, it's not perfect, but it at least works. Notice that this looks very, very white, but it's actually like a brownish, pinkish color. So there we go. There we got the background now too. All right, there we are. You can email me an image, and we'll see. I'm doing one more image here. I normally go about 2 hours if there's a good crowd, and there seems to be a good crowd today. So I normally go about 2 hours, and then hold on. Someone I need to talk to in general is okay. So this one is a very hard image. It is. Let's reset the defaults. And then, yeah, so let's see how this goes. Okay. So this one is hard. There's a lot of like fine detail in it, so that's always going to be tricky. You know, you would think in general you'd want to put all this yellow at the top, like the scribbly yellow at the top, but it's not always going to show well at the top because it's a really fine line, right? So if I come here and I grab this yellow and put it here, it looks okay in here, but if I try to do this in the slicer, I don't know if it's actually going to work. And the face is very, very yellow-orange. We've got this like orange here. What's the TD on this? Again, the lowest TD yellow I have is like a 4. We have some off-white here, like bright light yellow. Let's do the polysonic. Nope, discard that. Polysonic white. Give me a little bit finer blending. Put a red down here. So that makes the whole thing red, which I don't really like. So there's something going on here weird where that's becoming black. All right, so the lowest TD orange I have is a 2.7, so we'll go to 3 there. Now we'll grab a red and put it underneath the black. Ah, okay, that doesn't look good. So when I put the red beneath the black, oh, let's get rid of that. There we go. So we have this teal as well, which is missing. Maybe that can go on top of the white. A lot of tricky stuff in this image. I knew this was going to be a difficult image to do. But I'm worried about these yellow lines not printing well because they're real thin lines and they're often going to have spikes on them from all kinds of stuff. So I definitely would do moderate spike removal here. And then I'd try to hit these spots where we've got different colors shifting and jumping and see if we can get a better result there. But honestly, it's not terrible for just a couple minutes effort, but I would probably look at putting the yellow below the red, even though in terms of the image this doesn't make sense. I just feel like having the yellow at the bottom is going to give us a lot better line definition when we actually print it. Because it's going to be a recessed value, but it's going to be harder to get our browns and stuff like that. So I'm not liking our brown game at this point very well. Like this section here would need to be, would we put orange here to get our browns? Yeah, we can get our get our browns that way. The hardest thing is to get the order of the colors correct. That is absolutely correct. So the only issue with yellow on top is going to be printing it, and whether your printer can put out those thin yellow lines. I think it looks better. I think it's easier to pick the color order that way if you do that. So here I can control R these, I can control X that, and then I can put this here. And we can get those there, and then I could put the blue back here, and I have some room to play with blue shades here, like that. Put the red down here. So yeah, the hardest thing is whether your printer will print that well or not. The hardest thing to do is to get the order of the colors correct for color match. If you're color matching, this is why sometimes it's really nice to just take an image and say, I don't actually care if it matches exactly to the image. I just want to make a cool image, and I'm not going to worry about the exact order or the exact shades. I'm just going to grab some colors and make it look cool. Like if I brought this image in and said, let's just go to standard mode, and let's just bring a dark blue in. Actually, let's just use the chrominal deep sea blue here, you know, and get some of these colors in. And then let's grab the cyan. And like just make this cool looking image and not worry about hitting exactly, you know, the exact value of the print, not trying to get all the colors. It's so much of the image is captured here, and it's just not her face and backpack strap, but those add a whole bunch more complexity. So it's really fun to just come in here and play with 3-4 colors and do that, in my opinion at least. And you may disagree with my opinion. That is okay. But yes, so the hardest thing to do is in color match, and this is why color match is more difficult in general, is, why is my screen all messed up? Sorry, all my windows went into weird funky places. There we go. Now I can see. Is to figure out the order of everything to make them as coherent and consistent as possible. Putting black or white in the middle, sharing a black or sharing a white is often a very, very good way to go, because it makes them more coherent. And then trying to go from back to front, but also in terms of what blends together. And what blends nicely together and coherently from point to point together is more important, at least in my opinion, than going specifically from back to front. But going from back to front is generally the way you want to look at it. What if I put a gray here instead? How much muting? That would be a lot of muting. Still looks cool. But we could do something else like an azure blue or the teal here for a little bit. No, that's too strong. Kexeld Lake Blue. That's kind of fun. Oh, just FYI, Kexeld has come to America. They're in the library. You probably turned them off, but they are starting to make offerings on Amazon. However, I have been informed that they reformulated some of their colors, and so they aren't the same colors that are in the library. So I am working with them to get that information on those colors. I don't have it yet, but they have been adding colors to the U.S. Amazon. All right, I think you sent me one more image, right? So let me grab that. Jinx is always fun, and by fun, I mean difficult. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I see it's the JPEG. So here, let me pull it in. Let's inspect the JPEG, because this one may be one that absolutely benefits. How are we on terms of... So we have some We have some JPEG artifacts, but honestly, it doesn't look terrible JPEG-wise. Now here, I'm showing this at print resolution, so if I increase the print size, I said I'm going to print this at 340, I'm going to get a higher resolution image here. So I'll see more artifacts. This is actually a pretty good JPEG, so I don't think, there's some artifacts in the background, but that doesn't need to be as perfect, so let's take a look at this. All right, so we got Jinx here, very pale skin color. I have brightened her a little bit. If I turn off the brightening, she'll be a little bit darker, but it's not really changing her skin color. Obviously, you could do this. You know, you could go with this, and it would look pretty cool. But it's not going to give you, you know, all the different colors of the image. And Jinx is so, you know, the Arcane has so much color in it that it's kind of important to see the different colors. Also, it's a cool color palette in general. You could actually look at this one maybe as like a color match, or color aware, I mean, and just a red-blue color aware. Red-blue color aware. Let's turn that image edit off. Edit image off. Okay. And then you could potentially like put the magenta in the bottom and the blue at the top. It might work. I'm not guaranteeing it would work. Let's bring that up a ways. Bring our blue up here. Now for these, you rebase. You put a black underneath each one. We grab the white down here. Yeah, the problem here is like this skin is going to be, oh, let's turn tolerance to 0. There we go. That's better. But still the skin is, I think this part of the skin is showing up in the red. Yep. So we're going to need to actually color shift here. Let's turn the green on. That might fix things. Nope, that makes it worse. We're going to need to color shift towards the blue a little bit. To get the, yeah, see, this is not going to work because we have to color shift so far to the blue. Okay. So the idea here was we could grab a magenta, put it in the red zone. And get, you know, the background almost for free, but it's not working out. So, okay, we'll go into color match. We'll reset this and go color match. Okay. Go back to bright enhance 1. This is how I do most of them, and I will change them when necessary. Oh, and we turn off that color. The green channel's been turned off. We turn that back on. Okay. Okay, so again, I'm going to go background first. Now in this case, I think we are looking at lower TD colors here. I am not personally concerned with whether the skin ends up in the blue bucket, or the blue region, or the red region. But magentas and purples tend to be lower TD. So I'm wondering, I don't know that we can blend up to purple from magenta. Like if I grab a magenta is going to be a 1 TD. Right, let's bring this black up. Magenta is going to be like a 1 TD. And then if I grab this purple and say it's a 1 TD as well, we just don't get very much blending from that. Maybe it's enough, but we don't get very much from that. There's not that many shades that we get. It's pretty basic. But let's just say that's fine. Let's say that it's graffiti. We don't really care if it's perfect. Then would we go straight into dark blue from there? Maybe we go straight into dark blue from there to get her hair. And then into light blue. This one with a higher TD, like a 4 or 5, or maybe a 6. I have a 6 TD lighter blue. And then into a white highlight color. At like a 7.5 TD. And then just do her skin tone on top here? Is that, like, I'm trying to figure out what the best way to go about this is. Like, we get the background through her hair pretty well from this. And then it's a matter of, I mean, do we even need the black? I don't even know if the black, maybe we need the black up top. We grab this brown. We'd have a lighter brown. This one probably has some TD to it. Then we have these like peach colors. This whitish color here. The face isn't great here. We can bring that brown up underneath the clothing. This is purplish brown here. We'll bring that up here to grab that in the clothing. I mean, we're kind of getting there. I'm a little concerned how these are going to work out in terms of all the layers. See, because now we've got all this purple here. Like this is now catching. Like these pixels here are not coming into this range anymore. Those are down there, but then some of these, like that one's up here, which doesn't seem right. But then we got this. Why is that growing down there? And the eyes aren't quite right here. So, and also the hair is really kind of on top of her head. So it might be better to blend up to a white here, or blend up through the skin tones here first from blue. Well, wait, let's see here. Maybe we blend up from magenta and we put our purple and blues on top. Reverse that. Pop it out. Run it up here. Oh, yeah, let's see here. So what if we did magenta background? So the purple still needs to be down here. To purple. We did browns into skin colors here. Almost need to restart this entirely to get these to make sense. That looks a little bit better to me. There's still some issues with the skin here, and this does start to look a little bit like JPEG artifacts there, which I can't really see, but might be in there. I might be able to fix this by grabbing individual skin tones here. That is better. There's this like slightly bluish shade here. There, that's a bit better. So there, I think that's a better way to go after it. Oh, it's still 18 colors shifted to the blue? Thank you. There we go. That makes sense. Alright, so we still have some blue here that's matching, but we'll bring that down. I totally missed that that was still way shifted to the blue. Obviously that changes all my numbers a bit, but I still think this is the right way to do it. Come in this way. Just do your purple. Why did that turn green again? That's a weird bug. I'm going to have to figure that one out. Because that was a black. It was absolutely a black. I don't know that I actually even need a black here, but that was a black. And it keeps turning green. And there definitely are some bugs right now that I'm dealing with undos and stuff. But there you go. I like that. That gets the eyes right. It gets the hair pretty much right. I mean, it does a lot well by doing it this way. The skin's pretty good. There's this orangey here that I'm not getting. This orangey shade that I don't get, but... I just need to disable that layer. And that layer. There you go. Alright. So, there you go. That's probably how I would go after it. It's not perfect. I'd still adjust that a little bit. But the big question is if you have these shades of blue, if you have a 6TD blue here that you can do this with, or it doesn't have to be 6, but somewhere in that ballpark. We can shorten that. You know, it can be down lower, but you need this to not be a 1. It needs to be like a 3 or 4 probably to give you all the shades. I'd like to keep these shades, so I got to figure out why I can't, like why this is matching blue. There, I just dropped that in for white, so now it's matching there. There you go, that avoids that and gives you a nice blend up. So there you go. Yeah, so this one was one of those kind of a mix. You're gonna do the background by itself, and then you're just gonna reset and do all the other stuff. If that makes sense. Then you're gonna do the skin, and then you're gonna blend up to the blues. Since I'm not really using a black here, you could theoretically actually go the other way. But if your dark blue isn't dark enough, it will take forever to blend up here because the white makes a big difference. But you could go this way in theory too, if that works better for you, for your colors, for what you can blend with. If your blue is a low TD blue, then you're no problem. You come from here, your solid blue, in a few layers, and that would make it a little thinner, and you'll get a smoother blend on top. And then you don't really want to blend all the way to this white, so and that will avoid having the conflicting colors in the middle here. Probably go thinner here and get a little bit better definition. Yeah, that's probably what I would do. And this is recessed, like this part here, this hair is below the blue, but it doesn't look bad. It's barely noticeable because of the way the blendings go nicely together. All right, there you go. And that's my cursor. All right, any more questions? Otherwise, I think I'm going to wrap up. Any questions on what I've done here, or more specific questions about like HueForge in general or controls in 090? Exactly. That's a good attitude, and especially a good thing to think about is that literally what was I going to say? A good thing to think about here is that you know, as you do pick up colors, or like maybe you're like, oh, I have the blues and the whites and the browns maybe, but I don't have the magentas and stuff. Well, just give her different color graffiti in the background. Or over time, this will still be laid out properly for you then to put in new colors as you get them. And say, okay, I'm going to adjust this color or adjust that color and make it better. And you can also put in more colors in the intermediate here. I could put in more specific colors here to smooth the blends out. I'm just trying not to be too complicated on this. It's often better to compromise for a slightly chunkier blend that still looks good within the art style than to try to get everything exactly right. And then it gets really complicated. And yeah, if we look at the luminance here, you'll see that it's how it separates everything by layers in the mesh. Now, because I have this thing set up to be super tall, if I were to bring this down and say that the blending depth is 2.48, so the blend depth is like 2, this would show much wider. The luminance is based on the total overall max possible height, so this splits the colors up a little bit better now. All right, science and matter. I will not stop forging. Thank you very much. I will say, I do have one person helping me with a German translation. It's just one guy, so if someone else wants to help, they can volunteer. If you own HueForge, you'll just get a slightly modified version of 090 that lets you load translation files and the translation file, and then you can help update it. This changed again. Okay, I gotta fix this bug. This is bizarre. That black changed again into a green. Okay, you want to make a really big one. So really big ones can be done one of two ways. I recommend doing it by splitting the image up into pieces. That is my recommendation. You do not have to take it. I recommend that you do, like, if say you wanted this as a giant poster, I recommend that you do the work, get the layers set up, everything all done, and say this is my image, and then save it. And then you cut this, go online to an image cutting tool, or if you have one locally, and say I want this in, I want this at 200 by 200, and I want, so you're going to say, okay, I want it to be, this one is 340 by 191, so you find out the aspect ratio of that, and you say, okay, I want it to be, you say I always want it to be 200 tall, so it's going to be 112 wide per box, or per box, and then you're going to say, okay, I want to make it really tall. I want to make it a meter tall. So you'd say, okay, well, I need at least 5 by whatever it would be to make it a meter tall. 5 tall and like 4 wide or whatever. And then it'll cut it up into the image into those pieces. You bring each image in, do reduce the spike removal down to at least to moderate, and then bring each image in and just export the STL for each image and print them individually. You can cut the STLs in the slicer, but it's much harder. It's hard to get it accurate, and when you're looking at like a 2 meter fit print, you probably had to reduce the detail to get it to fit, and you've got a bazillion triangles, so it's generally better to do the cutting in the image and then bring them into HueForge. At some point, HueForge will support that, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I don't even know all the best practices, to be honest. I don't do it very often. And if you want to help with that, just send me an email at steve@thehueforge.com and say you want to help with the German translation. But there are multiple places. Sure, yeah. Definitely not a bad idea to cut it up, do the small print, make sure everything looks good before you embark on the giant print. But just cutting up the STLs. If you're doing if you want to do like 2 print, like say you have a bamboo, and you want to do like 220 by 220, and you really want to do 440 by 440, or 450 by 450, then maybe making a 450 by 450 and cutting it up twice is easy enough. But when you're starting to cut it to 15 pieces or 20 pieces or whatever, there's some point where it becomes a giant pain to cut it, and it's much, much, much faster and easier to just come into the slicer and say, or come into the HueForge with smaller image pieces and save them. But technically in HueForge, I should be able to do, I should be able to cut the image up for you more or less and make the pieces for you. It takes some extra steps and effort to make sure that they line up well and get all the numbers right and all that kind of stuff. So it has not been the priority versus getting more color accuracy and things like that. And UI fixes. All right. Okay, so if anyone has any more questions, I'll give it a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to call it a day. Thank you all for coming out. It was a good session, really good topics and very good questions, and some fun challenge images, some of which are very difficult and some of which are, not too bad. And if anyone knows how to Z-tune a single tool on an XL, let me know. I got one that's smearing all over my prints. It's definitely too close. I mean, I could just change it, but I was hoping there was a way to calibrate just one value. All right. Everyone good? All right. Thank you, Nico. I know there's a delay, so I'm giving us a couple more minutes. Oops, didn't want to do that. I thought that was in the other window. There we go. Back in the woods. Oh, I did forget to mention, there's just one last thing. If you want to chat in the live chat, you need to have been a subscriber to the channel for 5 minutes. That's the only rule. So if you want to be able to type messages in the live chat next time, just hit the sub button. I don't send notifications out constantly or anything, and then you'll be able to do it. Let's see. A problem when described. Okay, what's the problem with describe? It says change at layer 24, but exported STL only has 20 layers, for example. It depends on what mode you're in and what you may have done. So you might have scaled in the slicer, in which case you changed the Z and you changed Z height, and then you changed the number of layers. It might be color match, and there's layers above a point that aren't ever matching to anything, so they never get used. And the describe text doesn't turn those off. I guess I could. I think it does say that these are above the mesh. And then the other option is that there was some thin features that HueForge sees, but when it slices, they go away. The slicer gets rid of them, which means that you really won't see a difference. So if you were to middle click or go to slicer view here, you would see exactly what the slicer should look like. There's no blending here. And you could compare them, and if they look the same, then that's probably the issue. If they look different, then it's a different issue. Image is brighter on left than actual. How can I adjust that now in the new version? I mean, I adjusted it this way by image editing it. So if you went to standard, so edit image adjusts the image itself, which is necessary for color match. You can't do any of these brightness compensations not on the image. So brighter on left than the actual. So is that what you mean? Like this image is brighter than the real image? Or you're saying this one is brighter than this one? That's a kind of a matter. Or you could have the bright adjustment up here that makes the whole image brighter. That's the other option there, is that the bright adjust has been shifted. I'm not 100% certain. Yeah, oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Not 100% certain I understand the issue here. But the bright enhancement, if I go to standard, it's going to darken everything. It's going to darken the image. It's going to darken because I'm in image edit. It brightens up here. If I drag this over, it really brightens it up. Is that what you mean? But on the left, you're saying the prediction. This is brighter than the image. I mean, that's based on your filaments and your choices that you've made. You could bright adjust it up or down, but again, it's based on the images, the filaments, and the choices that you've made, not so much the... I'm not sure I understand your question, Ron. So the other thing, science and matter, is... So here you have the mesh height. So here my mesh height is very close to my maximum height. It isn't all the way there, but it's very close. But this mesh height could be lower than your maximum height by quite a bit. And you could have sliders up there, but they're just not being used, especially in color match, because you're never matching layers up there. So I would have to see the particular example, but the most common issue is there's a spike or small feature that is slicing away, and it won't matter because it was not really making a sizable impact on the print. And if you look in slicer view, it should look, if it looks the same as what you see in your slicer, more or less, then it's not going to make a difference. It was just a tiny feature that sliced away. You scaled it in your slicer, and scaled Z, so you change the number of layers, or you are in color match and it doesn't have enough layers. The way to check, to be sure, is check what this value is, the first value here, under mesh height. If, when you look in your slicer, so if I bring my slicer up, if I bring up my slicer, and I'll just bring up a model I have, and I'll just want to show you. I'm not looking specifically. Okay, so here's the model I have in here. And it tells me, if you click on it, if you're in prepare and you click on it, and it says this is, this one says 1.9 millimeters tall. If that matches what HueForge says, then almost certainly what's happening is it's slicing away. So if HueForge were to say 1.9, which it doesn't because it's a different model, but if it said 1.9 and the model says 1.9, but when you slice it, it says like 1.7, then it sliced away some layers because they were too small and spiky, or like little teeny lines that it couldn't print. And then you're fine, as long as those two match. Even if it says to change, you just can't change. Those just don't do anything. Yeah, your model geometry was probably hiding behind the filament library, or with the filament library on tab, like I talked about at the beginning. Yeah, so you'll need to move that. The default layout has it with the filament library right here. So hidden. And that's just to fit on tiny screens because some people run this on a 1366 by 768 display and they should be able to use it too. And there you have to do that. Any other questions? Those were good questions. All layer height is correct though, yeah. I mean, the other thing that can happen, your layer height might be correct, but your first layer could be wrong. Your base layer might not be the right initial height. Initial layer height might not match the base layer height. But okay. If you have any more questions, please feel free to message me in Discord or email me or send me a message in the store chat. Store chat's probably the hardest to pass like screenshots and images around with. Discord's the easiest, but not everyone uses Discord, I understand. All right, guys. Thank you for coming. And I'll see you next time. Again, the next European hours will be after I get back from Japan. So that will be like the 20... Let me look at a calendar. 24th of June will be the next European office hours. And I'll do that on YouTube. And then the next U.S. office hours will be next week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. I look forward to seeing anyone who can make it there.